Have you ever noticed how some people effortlessly repel toxicity? How certain individuals walk into a room, and without saying a word, the manipulators, the energy vampires, the narcissists quietly drift away. This is no accident. There is a hidden force at work, an invisible aura, created not by aggression or by force. They slip into the cracks of your psyche, where you have not yet shined the light of consciousness. They thrive where your boundaries are weak, where your sense of self is fragile. But by something much deeper, a mastery of the self. A soul that no longer leaks energy in search of external validation becomes unappetizing to those who thrive on chaos and confusion. Toxic people feed on uncertainty. They sense your inner doubts, your hidden wounds, your unclaimed shadows. And wholeness is unattractive to those who thrive on fragmentation. This is the power of individuation, the process of becoming your true self, untethered by the expectations and projections of the world. Toxic people will sense, almost instinctively, that you cannot be manipulated. They will feel the strength of your boundaries, the clarity of your energy, and they will look elsewhere for their supply. A part that believes love must be earned through sacrifice. A part that confuses attention with affection. These are not faults, they are invitations to grow. You no longer resonate with guilt-driven relationships or endless emotional entanglements. They think they need strategies, tactics, psychological tricks, but the real protection is far more profound. It lies not in creating barriers against the outer world, but in dissolving the fractures within your own inner world. You become a living embodiment of clarity and calm, and clarity is kryptonite to manipulation. It is to walk into the shadowy corridors of your psyche and see where you have abandoned yourself. It is to confront the moments you betrayed your own boundaries to feel accepted, the times you silenced your truth to maintain connection. These are the wounds toxic people sense instinctively. Like predators drawn to blood, they sense the unhealed, the fragmented, the insecure. You radiate an authenticity that acts as a silent repellent to those who would drain you. They feel, often without knowing why, that they cannot penetrate your space. And so they move on, looking for easier prey, for those who still seek themselves in the reflections of others. They do not feed on your strength. They feed on your unconsciousness, on your blind spots, on the places within you that still cry out for love and validation. It requires courage, patience, and an unwavering commitment to meet every part of yourself with honesty and compassion. In doing so, you create an inner sanctuary, a space so complete that the external world cannot shake it. And that, in the deepest sense, is the only true protection. Every passing traveler can walk in, rearrange the furniture of your soul, take what they want, and leave you emptier than before. You might call this love, or compassion, or being open-hearted, but in truth, it is a silent plea. Please see me. Please make me whole. The manipulator appears in your life not to destroy you, but to reveal the places where you still abandon yourself. It is about learning to sit with your own loneliness instead of filling it with unhealthy connections. You begin to remember that you are not here to be chosen. You are here to choose. You no longer cling to the hope that others will complete you. Instead, you become the one who completes yourself. And in this profound self-possession, toxic people find no foothold. They cannot manipulate what is not fragmented. They cannot confuse what is clear. They cannot enter where there is no invitation. You are not here to be devoured by others' needs. You are here to embody your own wholeness. When you do, you stop seeking situations that drain you. You stop being seduced by drama and pain disguised as passion. When you become whole, you become untouchable to those who seek to exploit the cracks in your soul. You choose peace over chaos, depth over superficial validation, solitude over counterfeit connection. It is about realizing that love is not a transaction, but an offering, and that true love never asks you to sacrifice your integrity. But imagine for a moment, what if you were to become so whole within yourself that there was no longer any space for their hooks to enter? What if you learned to stand so deeply rooted in your own worth that nothing outside of you could destabilize your center? Toxic people will drift away, not because you fought them, but because they can no longer find nourishment in your field. You have become sovereign, complete. You have turned your wounds into wisdom and your pain into power. You recognize manipulation not as a puzzle to solve, but as a signal to step back. You no longer feel the compulsion to fix, to heal, to convince others of your value. Instead, you realize that your value is inherent. It is not dependent on who accepts or rejects you. This is the secret, the silent shield that makes you invisible to toxicity. You see, every encounter in life is not just an external event. It is a mirror, a revelation of your own inner landscape. If you attract toxic people repeatedly, it is not because you are cursed or unlucky. It is because your unconscious is inviting you to awaken, to look at the parts of yourself you have disowned. Perhaps there is a part of you that fears saying no. When you begin the inner work, you stop playing these unconscious games. The moment you integrate your shadow, the hidden, repressed parts of your psyche, you become whole. Imagine standing in a storm, not flinching, not collapsing, but simply watching the chaos swirl around you without touching your core. You begin to see toxic patterns for what they are, echoes of an old story you no longer wish to play a part in. This mastery is not about building walls. It is about radiating such an authentic, integrated presence that falsehood cannot enter. The greatest power is not in controlling others, but in mastering yourself. And in this sacred choosing, you become free. You will find that as your inner world transforms, so too does your outer world. This is the secret. It is not a technique to learn, but a transformation to embody. Most people believe they must build high walls and wear heavy armor to protect themselves from toxic people. The moment you begin to master your inner landscape, toxic people naturally lose their power over you. When you do not know yourself, you move through life like a house with open doors and no guards. To master yourself is to become intimately acquainted with your own darkness. But when you choose to turn inward, when you bravely illuminate these dark corners instead of projecting them outward, you begin to seal these energetic leaks. This is the true alchemy of the soul. You transform your wounds into wisdom, your fears into discernment, your longing into presence. Your energy becomes like a fortress without walls, unbreakable, not because it is defended, but because it is whole. To master yourself is not a final destination, but a lifelong unfolding. Toxic people do not enter our lives by mere chance. They are drawn to the subtle signals our unconscious emits. These signals arise from the wounds we refuse to see, the fears we hide from, the parts of ourselves we disown. We imagine we are victims of their manipulations, but in truth, they are mirrors uncomfortable, often cruel mirrors that show us where we are still asleep to ourselves. If you find yourself repeatedly attracting those who drain you, betray you, or take more than they give, it is not a punishment. It is a profound invitation. The psyche, in its infinite wisdom, creates circumstances and relationships that reflect the content of our inner world. What you attract is what resonates with your unhealed stories. A manipulative friend, an emotionally unavailable lover, a critical family member, each is an echo of an unconscious narrative, often formed in childhood, when your sense of self was still fragile and forming. You must face the pain of your own abandonment, the grief of your own silence, the rage of having betrayed yourself for connection. But in that confrontation, you awaken. You become less reactive to the external world, less entangled in the games of others. The more you look inward for understanding, the safer you truly are. The illusion that betrayal is about your inadequacy, rather than their inability to meet you in your wholeness. You are no longer a participant in unconscious contracts of pain and sacrifice. You become a lighthouse rather than a harbor for lost ships. Not in fighting external battles, but in ending the internal war within yourself. When you master this, you do not just avoid toxic people. They avoid you, for they sense your light is no longer theirs to feed on. They slip into your life through the back doors of your psyche, the parts you have neglected, denied, or hidden even from yourself. They sense where you are vulnerable, because you have not yet claimed those pieces of your soul. When you begin to individuate, these cracks begin to seal, not through force, but through awareness. When you are whole, you become an enigma to those who seek to dominate you. It is about intimacy with yourself, so deep that false intimacy with others can no longer seduce you. You begin to love in a new way, not from need or compulsion, but from fullness. You no longer enter relationships hoping to be completed. You enter to share your completeness. You no longer stay to prove your worth. You stay because there is true resonance. You become the author of your life, rather than a character in someone else's script. You learn to discern between real connection and emotional bondage. You begin to choose from love, rather than from fear. They cannot find the weak points they once latched onto, because you have turned those wounds into wisdom. It is the process of stepping out of collective expectations and stepping into your soul's unique blueprint. In this space, you become unrecognizable to those who once fed on your doubts. They require chaos, confusion, emotional unavailability. When you embody presence, when you become deeply aware of your feelings, needs, they are no longer drawn to your light, for they sense it is no longer theirs to consume. You may mourn the version of yourself who thought love was something to be earned through self-betrayal. But in this grief is a sacred alchemy. You discover a depth of self-love and self-respect that no external relationship could ever provide. And from this depth, you begin to attract connections that mirror your new frequency, relationships based on mutual respect, depth, and authenticity. It is the death of the false self and the birth of the true self. And values, you create an energetic atmosphere in which only those aligned with your truth can breathe. You become like a fortress whose strength lies not in its walls, but in its solid foundation. Toxic people sense this immediately. They may test you at first, trying to find the old you, the compliant, accommodating, fearful self. But when they encounter your new solidity, they retreat, for there is no nourishment for them here anymore. You look at the shadows you once disowned and say, "This too is me." Individuation is the path of becoming who you truly are, beneath all the masks, roles, and inherited expectations. You shine a light so strong that those who seek darkness cannot bear to come close. When you embark on this journey, something extraordinary happens. The people and patterns that once entangled you begin to fall away, almost as if by magic. But this is no magic. You stop blaming the world for your pain and start seeing how your inner wounds create the outer drama. Perhaps you were taught to believe that to be lovable, you must be agreeable, silent, accommodating. You learn to mold yourself to please others, to sacrifice your voice to maintain connection. These patterns live in your unconscious and act like magnets for those who would exploit them. It is the natural result of stepping into your authentic self. You no longer accept the scraps of affection offered by someone who cannot meet you. You no longer stay in situations that drain your life force. You stop performing and start being. In this state of being, your energy becomes coherent, aligned, whole. And coherence is the great repellent to manipulation, because you no longer play those games within yourself. Perhaps you learned early on that love had to be earned, that you must please to be safe, that your needs were burdensome. When those hooks are removed, when your self-worth no longer depends on another's approval, when you stop negotiating your boundaries to be loved, there is nothing left for them to attach to. You do not have to push them away or convince them of your worth. You simply embody it. And in doing so, you send a signal into the world. I am no longer available for anything that diminishes my soul. They will feel the clarity of your energy, and they will drift away, often without a word. You begin to see the pattern not as a curse, but as a curriculum. You stop vibrating at the frequency that attracts the toxic. You no longer offer yourself as a stage for their drama. You see manipulation not as a puzzle to solve, but as a sign to step away. You become deeply rooted in the soil of your own truth, and no storm, no matter how fierce, can uproot you. You understand that each toxic encounter has been a lesson, an invitation to turn inward and reclaim what you gave away. These lessons sink deep into the unconscious and shape your relationships long after you that left the original source. The adult self, unaware of this subterranean blueprint, believes these encounters are about the other person. But in truth, they are about the parts of yourself you have yet to claim. When you remain unconscious of these dynamics, you become an open field for toxic energies. Like a house with unlocked doors, your life becomes a playground for those who sense your unconscious agreements. I will sacrifice my needs to keep you. I will tolerate your chaos if it means I am not alone. I will betray myself so you will not abandon me. These silent vows attract those who thrive on control and power, those who feed on the light of others to avoid their own darkness. Yet when you dare to descend into your own depths, to explore the childhood wounds, to confront the shadow, to examine the ways you have kept yourself small, something miraculous happens. The process of integrating these lost parts is not simple. It is an act of profound courage. The toxic person senses this shift. Manipulators and energy vampires thrive on unconsciousness, on your confusion, on the small hooks of self-doubt you leave exposed. This is the paradox. The more you look outward for safety, the more vulnerable you become. The ultimate freedom is not freedom from pain, but freedom from illusion. The illusion that someone else holds your worth. The illusion that love must be earned. By integrating your wounds, you transform your energy field. This inner transformation is the silent repellent that no toxic person can override. That is the true power. It is the sacred process of integrating the conscious and unconscious parts of your psyche, so that you no longer move through life as a fractured being, but as a unified whole. Toxic people thrive in the cracks of your disowned self. To individuate is to take responsibility for your own darkness, instead of projecting it onto others. But as you uncover these patterns, you begin to make different choices. When you are fragmented, you are easy to control. Individuation is not about isolation. It is not about becoming untouchable or cold. Toxic relationships cannot survive in the field of authentic presence. This does not mean the journey is without pain. In fact, as you individuate, you may feel the grief of letting go of old patterns and people. You may feel moments of loneliness as the old companions fall away. Yet in that loneliness, a new companion arises, your own soul. This is the gift of individuation. Not just freedom from toxic people, but freedom from the parts of yourself that kept calling them in. Individuation is the greatest act of liberation a human being can undertake. And so, without needing to fight, to explain, or to justify, you find that toxic people simply disappear. Mastering your energy is not about controlling every thought or policing every emotion. It is about becoming deeply intimate with the silent forces that move you from within. Most people live at the surface of their being, tossed around by the shifting waves of approval and rejection, praise and criticism. They react to the world as if they are small boats adrift on a vast, stormy sea. But when you learn to master your energy, you drop an anchor into the depths of your own soul. When your self-worth depends on external validation, you become a puppet in the hands of anyone who can offer or withhold affection. Toxic people sense this vulnerability as keenly as a predator smells blood. They know exactly where to pull, exactly how to twist your longing for approval into a leash around your spirit. And paradoxically, this love does not close you off from others. It opens you to relationships of true depth and reciprocity. You see their tactics, their hidden agendas, their attempts at control, and instead of reacting, you observe. Toxic people, consciously or unconsciously, feel this field. They sense there is no foothold, no crack in your foundation through which they can slip. And so, they drift away, looking for easier prey. You stand firm, grounded in the knowledge that you are not responsible for healing them, saving them, or sacrificing yourself to keep them comfortable. You realize that true compassion includes compassion for yourself. Because in the end, wholeness is the one thing that cannot be exploited. It is the fortress that requires no walls, the power that needs no dominance, the love that asks nothing in return, because it is already complete. Because when you no longer need to be needed, you can finally meet others as they are, rather than as projections of your unmet wounds. Rather, it is about embodying a presence so strong and clear that it naturally filters out what does not resonate with your highest self. When your energy is coherent, you emit a silent signal. I am whole. I am not available for games, manipulation, or partial connections. Your relationships evolve. Your choices become clearer. Your sense of purpose sharpens. You learn to sit with discomfort rather than run from it, to honor your needs without apology, to trust the quiet voice within that knows before your mind can explain. You stop leaking energy into endless battles of validation and reclaim that energy to build, to create, to love in higher ways. The less you chase love, the more you realize you have been love all along. The less you fight to be seen, the more deeply you see yourself, and in that seeing, you become luminous. You stop being a passive participant in your life and become the sovereign center from which all decisions and movements arise. There is a profound psychological truth here. Those who lack inner authority are the easiest to manipulate. But when you master your energy, you become ungovernable. You no longer dance to the tune of someone else's need for control. You no longer shrink to avoid rejection or inflate yourself to win admiration. You exist as you are, in your true size, with your full spectrum of light and shadow integrated. You are no longer searching for love like a beggar at the gates. You carry it within you as a sovereign flame. This mastery begins with radical self-awareness. You must be willing to look at the ways you abandon yourself in order to be chosen. You must see clearly where you dilute your truth to avoid conflict or where you trade authenticity for belonging. These small betrayals accumulate and become an energetic signature, a silent invitation for toxic people to enter and feed on your unclaimed power. The path to mastery is not about adopting rigid defenses or withdrawing from the world. This is not arrogance. It is sacred self-respect. It is the ultimate expression of love for oneself. When you are centered in your own energy, you can witness a toxic person without being pulled into their vortex. This inner solidity creates a force field around you, not a wall that shuts the world out, but a living, breathing aura of authenticity that repels falsehood. The beauty of mastering your energy is that it not only protects you from harm, but transforms your entire life landscape. This is the path of psychological and spiritual maturity, to become so fully aligned with your own essence that you cannot be swayed by external storms. And slowly, you begin to embody the profound paradox. The less you strive to please others, the more magnetic you become to those who are truly aligned with your spirit. This is the secret that makes toxic people avoid you, not your aggression or your defenses, but your unshakable wholeness.